This is going to be so good.
話を聞いてからだ。
話？何もねえな。
落ち着きなよ。これは予言だから、行動によっては回避もできるって団長が言っただろ。
そうか。今週何があったか説明しろ。
言えない。
あ
だがそこにある一つ目の詩の内容は事実だった。とだけ言っておこう。
聞いたろ。
ああ、待てって。
Hold on.
なぜ言えない？
Yeah.
それを言ったら言えない内容を言ったも同然。だから言えない。言わない
Crollo's going.
言えない。僕がギリギリ言えるのはそこまでだ。
So his approach there is, I mean, it requires a few of them, and mainly essentially Crollo to dissect this and pick up on this, right? The things Hisoka is trying to establish or sell, rather.
やめとくぜ。てめえはやりづれえからな。なわけねえ
Ha.
だろ、ボケ。
Oh.
信長。少し黙れ。
Stop talking for a bit. He's got the book open.
いくつか質問。
Okay, then. He's biting.
ものは言えないでいい。死にあったさらわれた秘密というのは何だ。団員の能力。
The abilities.
相手の能力は言えない。相手の成り形は
Yeah.
言えない。
So everything related
お前
to
と相手との関係は
the customer,
言えない。
he should be able to.
なるほど。鎖野郎は最低でも2つの能力を有する敵だ。
Look at this.
一つは羽毛銀を捕らえた時の能力。もう一つは密かの言動を縛っている能力。
Oh, Hisoka's gonna love
後
this.
者の能力は掟の剣という表現から察するところ、相手に何らかのルールを強いるものだろう。俺に嘘をつくなと、俺に関する説明を一切するなといったところか。ここからはさらに想像によるが、密かの体内には敵が仕掛けた何かが
He's not that far off, actually.
さらうのでは前後の文章
Right.
が食い違ってしまう。これは掟の剣が密かを攻撃するという予言を暗示させるため、つまり差し出すには剣で刺すという意味もかけてある。いいよ。
Hisoka's having his
密
moments.
かの言動を規制している剣はかなり強制力の大きな能力だ。やっぱりいいよ。あなたは絶対にあなたは僕がやる。
Careful now, Hisoka.
掟の剣って言うんだから何かを守らせてんだろう。
そう、それが団長の挙げた2つの命令である可能性は高い。あとは
He's loving this.
攻撃不可とかね。
Oh,
そして多分約束を
they ate it up.
あの予言は僕の創作。
Okay, there's the official
能力
confirmation.
を話した人数も8人じゃなく2人。
Oh, that's
もし
interesting.
も団長が僕の暗示に気づかなければ、旅団全員を敵に回す危険な賭け。すべては雲をヨークシンにとどまらせ、
But
団
him
長と戦う。
specifically, yeah.
ヨークシン
But
になれ
still-
ばいつまた団長に会えるかわからないからね。
Precisely, yeah. I'm a bit surprised that people aren't being a bit more suspicious, though.
11本足の雲が海峡病にかかり、さらに5本の足を失うだろう。狩宿から出てはいけない。
You leave here, you're going to die or lose that amount of members.
カリアド、つまりアジトか
I
ら
love Strong Market.
密かは死ぬということだろうな。ホームに戻ろうとすると半分死ぬってことだね。
なるほど。狩宿は離れない。
団長、どうする？
There is a big question.
聞くか、残るか。
He's gonna stay. He's gonna stay.
残ろう。
See,
ダメだ。なんで
okay, later.
さっきまで幻影旅団を捕まえるってノリノリだったじゃん。捕まえても意味なくなったからだろ。
Mm.
だからなんでさ。旅団にかけられてた賞金がパーになったんだから。
Okay, then.
残ってんのはリスクだけだろ。サザンピースのオークションはあさってからだぞ。少しでも金策に走んないでどうすんだ。
You're not building that up to that level,
ゲームに関
though.
しては秘策があるんだ。なんだよ秘策って。
Oh, he's been cooking, eh?
今はまだないさ。
He's got nothing.
全面もったいぶらずに言えよ。閉まるって本当に閉まっ
He's tapping. Let him go.
その作戦が成功する確率だよ。
Don't make him do math.
70%。70？やっぱり60ってとこかな。
Or probabilities.
おそらく五分五分ってとこか。競売が予定通り行われるかどうかの一点だ。
お前まさか迎え撃つ気か。そりゃいくらなんでも無謀だぜ。どうやってマフィアの援護なしに戦うつもりだよ。
I mean,
それは誤解だよ。
yeah,
奴らの後ろ盾など最初からない。
he's been solo.
俺たちにも何か手伝わせてよ。何でもいい。どんなことでもやれ。
Look at Killua.
断れ。賞金は撤回されたんだぞ。
分かってる。旅団を止めたい。その気持ちは変わってないよ。
断れ。断れ。命がけだぞ。おいおい、火に油がつの。よし、打ち合わせをしよう。
うん。やるんかい。
ターゲットはパクノダという女のみ。それ以外は無視していい。オッケー。私と共に行動する運転手が一人。レオリオ、頼めるか。平気だよ。クラピカのそばなら安全だから。
おいキルア、まるで俺がビビって一瞬間が空いたみたいな取り方すんな。
敵の目をくらます役、かく乱係だ。
分かった。ちょっと待った。それはかなりヤバい役だろ。また奴らと直接対峙しなきゃなんないじゃん。どんな作
He's
戦
so
だ。
protective.
至って単純だ。敵がゴンに気を取られている隙に私がパクノダを捉え車で連れ去る。最低 0.5 秒、できれば1秒、相手の注意を引きつけてほしい。
あんな連中から1秒
Yeah, even that is,
できるだろうか。
yeah,
ゴン、
it's not a piece of cake.
お前が鍵だ。できそうか。
まだわからない。考えてみるよ。
I mean, the troop's going to have their plan as well, though.
早急にパクノダを始末せねばならない。何を犠牲にしてもだ。こいつ
クラピカに感じた威圧感の正体はこれか。前以上の覚
Oh, yeah.
俺にも念の刃を刺してよ。念の刃をって。
ゴン、話聞いてたか。クラピカは旅団以外の人間を攻撃したら死ぬんだぞ。
だったらさ、なんでクラピカの胸には念の刃が刺さってんの？クラピカは旅団の人間じゃないでしょ。
Hey, gone asking the right question.
察しの通り、この刃が私の胸にも刺さっているわけだが、私だけは例外になるのかもしれないが、確実にそうだと言える自信はなかった。そこでルールを限定した。チェーンジェイルでの攻撃は雲にしか使わない。したがってジャッジメントチェーンは雲以外にも使える。この鎖は火の目の時にしか使えない。
Ooh, look at this on
火
demand.
の目、自分で出せるの？
訓練した。ヒーローになるまでかなり時間はかか
I'm
る。
always angry.
いいよ。ルールは任せる。
Hold on now. Hold on.
お
Hold on.
前の覚悟、確かに受け取った。
その刃ってさ、3本出せる。
任務完了の後はそのルール解除できるんだろうな。こっちも2人で話したんだが、やっぱり参加するからには。
一連卓勝っしょ。
One for all.
答えは
No, he's not gonna. He's not gonna.
両方とも可能だ。だが3人とも一つ勘違いしている。私はお前たちに刃を刺すこと
Yeah. He's not gonna do that to
全く
them.
ないのだよ。
だったら、なんでリスクが増すだけなのにこんな話を。
ゴン、お前の、いや、お前たちの覚悟に対する私なりの礼だよ。仮にお前たちから秘密が漏れたとしても、私はもう何一つ後悔しない。私はいい仲間を。
Yes, you do, my friend. You do. Ah.
笑えねえぞ。さて、んじゃ、俺行くよ。時間がもったいないからね。
Oh.
キルは気をつけてね。あ、任しとけって。
Hold on now, my guy. They'll be cooking something up as well. They're staying, so they'll be cooking. And they know how to plan.
暗くてわずかに明るい日、
Ooh.
あなたは狭い個室で二択を迫られる。誇りか裏切りしか答えはないだろう。
Oh.
死神があなたのそばに佇む限
Kurapika?
電話をかけてはいけない。
Oh
一
no.
番大事な時に繋がらないから。
電話に出るのも勧めない。
As in his
3回に
thing?
一度は死神につながるから。
来週はこの班を基本に動き、
Yeah,
単独行動は絶対に避ける。
exactly. You can't have, especially people like Shizuku.
パクノダ、マチ、コルトピ、フィンクス、
Gorotopi.
フェイタン、信長とシャルナークは俺と、ボノレノフ、フランクリン、ヒソカはここで待機。
Oh no, oh no.
子供がさ、ここの場所知ってんだけど、
子供
Oh,
鎖野郎とは関係ないみたいなんだけど。
そうだ、忘れてたぜ団長、そいつの入
Full
団
circle.
推薦するぜ。説得するさ。
No.
とにかく一度見てくれ。
団長、ダメだよ、乗せられちゃ
で、マチ、お前が気になることとは
う。なんとなく。
勘か？お前の勘は頼りになるから
the
な。
looming presence.
その子供、もしかしたら何か重大なつながりがあるかもしれない。用心のため、アジトのダミーを増やしておく。
Oh, there it is.
あと10頭いけるか。
10 more?
50は平気。それと
Oh no,
誰
Killua.
が侵入すればすぐわかるよ。僕のコピー。
Wow.
役割も果たすから。
Oh no, kill.
何かが違う。アジトの建物が増えてる。
Ooh. Look at this fit. Oh, already. God damn it.
キルアの反サイクロペディア。
Let's see.
今日ご紹介するのはフェイタン。
Feta.
趣味は拷問か？いい趣味してるぜ。クリードアイランドにも興味があるんだよ。
お前のその口調は無理だな。
に。
Cute. Okay, episode 55. Let's get into it. I mean, it's a fantastic table setting episode, isn't it? And of course, by the end of it, sets it up nicely for the next phase. Perhaps maybe the final phase of this arc, possibly. At this point, I'm kind of, not sure how much longer this arc is going to be. Looking back at it, really truly looking back at it for the first time, I've been so into it that I kind of just didn't even care much for kind of keeping track of how long it's been or how long it's going to be. I know I remember saying on maybe one or two occasions that I hope it's a long arc. But the thing is, now looking back at it, yeah, it's been quite a bit of time now, right? I mean, yeah, at this point, looking back at it, yeah, I've experienced quite a bit. It feels like I've experienced a solid chunk of it at this point. Some incredible moments, right? Some fantastic story beats. And then, of course, there's moments like this. I mean, first of all, it's a direct continuation of the fantastic cliffhanger, the fantastic setup in the last episode, as the Troupe and Chrollo continue dissecting and kind of coming to terms with some of these fortunes that took place or that are, given out by Chrollo in the last episode. And of course, at the center of it all, in the spotlight, is Hisoka, that magnificent bastard. My God, he's phenomenal. He's brilliant. He truly is quite brilliant, isn't he? I mean, I spoke on this in the last episode's discussion that, the notion that he was able to do that in a split moment or at a moment's notice, or, he just knew to kind of, throw up, that type of fortune, right? Mix it up in a manner that actually feels believable, right? That he felt, he could sell it. That he could sell it as one of the, similar fortunes as many of the other ones that came out, right? It's not even just that, even the structure of it, right? He even got that right. He even got that spot on, right? To a point that, it didn't feel like, this one kind of feels like a bit of an outlier. Perhaps, in its structure, it's not quite matching up to the rest. No. He nailed that as well. I mean, it is just so on brand for Hisoka. Right, masterful misdirection once again, and I've seen this on display throughout the series, right? Early stages of the series, and then beyond that, in the Heaven's Arena arc, this is nothing new. I know he's capable of this, but the thing that is kind of new to me is just how truly brilliant he really is. And again, I saw a glimpse of it in the last episode, right? So this idea of Hisoka being so obsessed with combat to an extent that he's even able to get sexual gratification out of it, arousal out of it, right? You almost, for the most part, associate Hisoka with combat, right? It's something he's damn good at, something he excels at. It's something he truly craves and longs for. And for that reason, he courts, adequate or, worthy opponents, even if it does require a bit of patience for the fruit to ripen before he takes a bite. But of course, for the immediate future, he does have someone locked in, right? He most definitely has someone locked in. And not only does he have his immediate target, his next target locked in, he was able to get one over him. Because at the end of the day, he sold it to Crollo, right? Crollo just bought it up, right? And the thing is, it doesn't all of a sudden mean that Crollo is, incompetent or anything. That all of a sudden, he's not as intelligent and not as clever and cunning as Hisoka. It just means that in this case, someone that actually could be an equal to Crollo in Hisoka was able to get one over him. Because ultimately, it is a masterstroke. It is, right? And it's it's a gamble. It's a risk. It's a major risk, but it paid off. So of course, as a Hisoka enjoyer, it's really quite a treat to see this side of Hisoka. I've seen it a few times, and it's always just really quite engaging. And once again in this situation, I get to experience it, and it's really quite entertaining, right? It's just I don't know, it's satisfying. It really is, But the thing is, even as a Hisoka enjoyer, as a fan of Hisoka, I'm still. It's not a clear-cut case of, I'm team Hisoka here. No. As you know, I really, really like the Phantom Troupe. So it's kind of like I'm happy that Hisoka was able to pull this off, because otherwise he would have been taken out, right? He would have been jumped and taken out. I mean, he would have gone down fighting, of course, but he's not going to be able to take on multiple members of the Phantom Troupe. And at this point, it still remains to be seen if he can actually even take on Crollo one-on-one. Hell, yes, of course, I believe it would be one of the best fights, right, the series could offer. But, at this point, I'm not entirely sure if Hisoka might be possibly chewing off a bit more than he's bargained for. If indeed that encounter is on the horizon, if indeed that part of his actual fortune is going to come true, and Crollo is going to be delivered to him by Kurapika, right? That's essentially the gist of his actual fortune, or one of the verses of it, at least. In these fortunes, there could be moments that, at first glance, or, in my immediate interpretation of it, I might think one thing, but it could be applicable to something else, or it could be speaking of something else. For example, just now, after this episode, or during this episode, I was thinking of Squala, right? And I'm thinking of Squala because that goodbye to his partner, it felt like, a pretty, textbook death flag, didn't it? Right? And the fact that they specifically mentioned, look after the scarlet eyes, right? That had me thinking. That really had me thinking. I mean, first of all, let's not forget, those scarlet eyes are copies, right? It's a copy that Kurapika made. So the Phantom Troupe actually has the scarlet eyes on them. So the thing is, there is the idea, the possibility, the concept of other scarlet eyes, right? Up until this point, I was almost immediately only associating it with Kurapika, and Kurapika in person, essentially, right? But again, there is a possibility here that I'm open to now at this point, that some of these fortunes, maybe they are speaking of another pair of scarlet eyes. Of course, the real ones that the Phantom Troupe has, and then of course a copy of the eyes that Squala is meant to be looking after. So I think that could be coming into play as well, especially given the fact that it feels like, again, a textbook death flag for Squala being left there by himself, to look after the eyes. And, of course, he's got the doggos, but still, it's kind of unmissable, isn't it? Oh, also, before I forget, I kind of want to mention this about Phaeton. And this is from the Hunterpedia, though, of course, I hear Phaeton's idea of, the big target, the big treasure that they think, or he specifically thought they could be targeting, right? This is from The Gathering of Heroes, right? That iconic episode. as, essentially Crollo confirms to them, no, they're taking everything. But of course, I believe Phaeton is the one who mentioned Great Island, right? And then, a few others had their own ideas. I believe Machi mentioned books because she said, oh, the boss really enjoys books. So I thought that was interesting as well in terms of, the next potential arc, right? And then, the next phase of this, right? They brought that up, or Killua specifically brought that up to Gon, come on, man. You've got to get your priorities straight. Remember the original plan, the original reason for all of this, right? To acquire a copy of Greed Island. So, that's on the horizon. He reminded him of the big auction that takes place in 2 days. So does that mean that, Phaeton has an interest in acquiring a copy of Greed Island as well? And the cool thing about this is that it feels like it's just something of a personal, interest, perhaps, for Phaeton. So, it's not even as if, the entire Phantom Troupe is in on it or anything, or interested in it. So I like that. I really like that. And, it's one of the things I've really enjoyed about the Phantom Troupe, how unique it feels, right? How unique the personalities of each one of the members feel. But yeah, sticking to the conclusion as our boy Killua the Scout goes back, right, to the HQ, or the location of the HQ, gets a bit of a surprise as Kurapika has multiplied it, or, made copies. 50 of them, right? I mean, my jaw kind of dropped after Crollo said 10, but the guy said, let's make it 50, So yeah, that's about to be a tricky situation for Killua. And not only that, he said that they function as N. And, his N is essentially, his capacity for that is essentially something that can rival Zeno, right? In terms of range. So of course, now it's up to Killua, right? His instincts, for him to decide if he is going to, step into this situation, or if he's going to kind of hang back. I mean, of course, first of all, he can just call them and kind of report this, right? Give them an update on this. And then let's see how it plays out from that point on. But yeah, even though Kurapika does have a plan, of course, that includes Gon, Killua, and Leorio. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not about to be easy at all. Of course, Crollo and the troupe is going to have their own plan, especially now that they are sticking around. I mean, it builds to that situation, and then Crollo ends up deciding that they are going to stay, right? Now, of course, that's not a shocker. That's not a surprise that he decided to stay, but still, the fact that they are staying, that makes things really quite interesting, and of course, really quite exciting, right, for this next encounter that's about to take place. And at this point, things are about to get really tricky. And the fact that they are staying now, realistically speaking, I am kind of expecting maybe a death or two at this point, to be honest, right? As far as the troupe goes. And of course, if that is the case, if that is my expectation, the prime candidates are the ones that are all, already kind of confirmed to be on the chopping block anyways, in terms of, their fortunes. And that's Shalnark, Shizuku, and Pakunoda. So I think it's a safe bet. If there is to be a death in the upcoming episodes, it might come from those three. As far as the Phantom Troupe is concerned, at least. It's the thought of that is, I don't know. Again, like I said, I don't really want anyone to die from the Phantom Troupe. And the thing is, both Pakunoda and Sharlark actually get really, really interesting fortunes as well, right? In addition to Shizuku's from the last episode. So yeah, it's a lot to think about, and I'll come back to that. I'll do like a full segment on just their fortunes. But going back to Hisoka and his big gamble, the big risk he takes, he's just so clutch in this episode. I just think there's something so impressive about that he's able to make Crollo dance to his tune. Now again, at no point am I suggesting that Crollo slipped up here and that he looks a little bit silly here. It's kind of like the opposite. Hisoka's plan and his execution of it is so brilliant that someone like Crollo was able to just go down that path that Hisoka laid out for him, right? It all rested on that. And of course, Hisoka is really, really quite impressed. So impressed that, he has one of his moments. And then, of course, he goes on to reiterate that, yeah, I simply must be the one to kill you. And one of the reasons it's so damn, I don't know, satisfying and, impressive is that, Hisoka just gives them a bit of information because there is a session of Chrollo asking really specific questions, right? And these questions are not meant to gain answers or anything. Not answers in the sense that, he's looking for clear-cut responses from Hisoka. It's more so qualifying questions, right? He's trying to gauge certain things. And, through Hisoka's response, he was able to kind of infer or gather or, come to the conclusion that, okay, so this is how things are. And yeah, the key here is that in front of everyone, in front of the rest of the troop members, Chrollo is able to kind of come to the conclusion that, okay, Hisoka is limited by this chain user. That information was forced from him, and that ultimately his ability to speak on the matter is limited, right? All of this is happening in front of the rest of the troop, and, it's Chrollo, it's the head honcho, the head himself, right, who's doing this, or doing this in the sense that he's the one who is dissecting it, right? And coming to this conclusion. So, if the boss is coming to this conclusion, of course, with a bit of input here and there, I think Charlark steps in every now and then as well. Hell, you have Charlark and Franklin jumping in to stop Nobunaga. And also on Nobunaga, I like how, even though he's been agitated and he's been really quite outspoken, confrontational, and all of that, the moment the boss said, okay, stop talking for a bit, after he uses one of his abilities, pops open the book, goes to that specific page, to that ability of his, right, that he stole from someone. He teleports him to a different part of the building, right, separates him from the situation at hand. And, after that point, Nobunaga does not say anything, right? He just takes it in. He takes it all in. So I like that. Of course, there's that respect. There's always that respect. And the thing is, yeah, by the end of it, of course, Nobunaga seems to be convinced as well. But that being said, I feel like I could have used someone like maybe Machi. Maybe I could have used someone like Machi stepping in to question a thing or two, right? I just kind of assumed, by the end of the last episode, I kind of assumed there might be some pushback, right? In terms of suspicion of Hisoka. Again, going back to the Gathering of Heroes, they made it really quite clear that, they're not the biggest fans of Hisoka, right? That they don't seem to have the same type of bond with Hisoka as the rest of them have with each other, or most of them at least, right? So yeah, I'd say that was a little bit surprising, that there wasn't a bit more in terms of suspicion. But again, the thing is, Chrollo takes the lead on this, right? And if Chrollo is the one coming to this conclusion, right, it's the boss. It's the boss, If he thinks it's sufficient, if he's okay with it, and he's done his due diligence in front of us, and it certainly, appears to be quite satisfactory, and it all checks out, then, then there's no reason, I suppose, for anyone else to kind of step in and still voice more suspicion, right? And, as far as Pakunora's ability, so the fact that it wasn't even brought up at all by anyone, I suppose you can kind of infer that all of them think, or there's this collective understanding that, okay, once it's been established that, okay, Hisoka is being compelled to keep certain information to himself because of this sort of law. And the crazy thing about this is that indirectly, Hisoka actually kind of nails, some of Kurapika's abilities, right? The functionality of it, at least, right? Because, the judgment chain and the sort of law kind of have the same functionality, right? So the thing is, Chrollo kind of actually does have a bit of an understanding for Kurapika's abilities, even though Hisoka didn't actually know about those abilities, right? So it's funny how that kind of plays out. But the thing is, let's not forget here, Hisoka and Chrollo, and that was key here in Hisoka's thinking, that, Chrollo is experienced, really experienced in Nen and abilities. He's seen a lot of things in his time, right? And of course, so has Hisoka. So he was able to come up with something like the Sword of Law, right? Something that can exist. Something like that can exist. It feels like something they could have come across or may have come across something similar. So of course, even though there's actually no restrictions on Hisoka, he's not being compelled to keep his silence about certain things, the mechanics of it, the functionality of it, it essentially helps Chrollo to come to the conclusion that, okay, whoever this chain user is, the one with the scarlet eyes, most likely he's got two abilities that are at play here. The first one, he just absolutely nails perfectly, right? It's the ability that allowed him to capture Uvogin, right? So he understands that much. He's able to infer or gather that much. And then the second one, it's this Sword of Law ability, essentially, that again is pretty much similar to chain judgment, or judgment chain rather. But yeah, going back a bit to finish up a few points, Pakunara's ability, right? Her just being in a position to just straight up check Hisoka's memories, right? That could just solve everything, right? Not exactly. Now, of course, that was one of the talking points in my last discussion for episode 54. Okay, they could just kind of get Pakunara to do that. But after kind of listening to Chrollo's conclusion, and I'm speaking of the rest of the Phantom Troupe listening to his conclusion, there's this collective understanding, I believe, after a certain point that, okay, trying to access his memories kind of doubles as him revealing information, and that might actually get him killed, most likely, because one of the things that Chrollo believes or assumes is that this chain user might have placed something within Hisoka, inside of Hisoka. So I think I can chalk up the exclusion of Pakunara's ability in this specific case up to that, right? That essentially, it could put Hisoka in danger, right? And the thing is, he would have refused anyways, right? And he also had an out. He straight up just could have said, oh, no, I must decline. I mean, of course, he wouldn't take that tone. He'd be a bit more direct and stern, but, he can just straight up say, no, that's risky. That could count as me giving up that information, because you are going to gain that information out of me. So even that would have put in this doubt in all of their minds, right? Okay, it is risky. They have no idea. So, they're better off just not trying to read his memories, right? But then, earlier I mentioned Machi. I could have used maybe someone like Machi voicing her opinion, because, I've seen a run-in with Machi and Hisoka, and, because of that run-in, you could infer, you could just see that, Machi is not the most trusting of Hisoka. I mean, she's actually the character that exposits, information about his abilities. So she has a solid grasp on it. So she knew about texture surprise, right? But, as a whole, she just knows he's a tricky customer, right? He's got these tricks up his sleeve. But again, in this specific case, Hisoka isn't making a copy, right? I mean, in that scene, as he is kind of, owning up to everything, his internal monologue, from his perspective, kind of, functioning as this official confirmation for the audience, if it wasn't clear enough already, they do show that shot of two pieces of paper. That I think that's more so to show, right, a visual depiction of it. But the actual piece of paper that Pakunara takes from him, and then of course the others grab as well, it's the original, right? But it's been altered, because they also established back in Heaven's Arena that even though texture surprise can copy something, mimic something, replicate something, Machi, again in that scene, confirms that it can certainly pass the visual test, right? It can be a perfect copy of something, but apparently once you touch it, it kind of, it feels different. It kind of falls apart, right? It fails the touch test, essentially, right? I love that there's always drawbacks. There's always restrictions. There's always, pros and cons to some of these really fantastic abilities. But see, the thing is, just the nature of it, the nature of the fortune, and the nature of the situation that's being presented, a part of it is really quite upfront. That essentially, sure, Hisoka gave up the information. He gave up secrets. He's a traitor. Again, not by choice, according to his fortune, the made up one, of course. But, it's still kind of put out there that, okay, yeah, this happened. He gave up the secrets, right? Because he was compelled to. Because of something like, the sword of law and all of that. So, immediately it's kind of like, okay, it's presented in such a damning light, such a bad light for Hisoka that, maybe there's no need to actually even check any further, right? In terms of, oh, okay, what about the rest of this? But let's circle back now to Pakunara and Sharlnark's fortunes, right? These are really interesting, both of them. I'd say Sharlnark's is a bit more cryptic. Pakunara, on the other hand, has really quite the interesting one in the sense that a few things are really quite clear, right? It's presenting her in, or potentially, of course, it's potentially presenting her in a situation that might have her, in a rock and a hard place, having her make a crucial call, perhaps. Right? So let's see. Let's tackle hers first. So, on a dark day with very little light, you will face two choices in a small room, right? So, actually, let me continue before I, jump in. You must choose between pride and betrayal. So, that's the reason I kind of speculate about this rock and a hard place type situation, right? And the crazy thing is, this situation here, potential situation here, it kind of even almost feels like the fake situation that Hisoka created for himself in his fake fortune, right? It is kind of implying that, Hisoka was in a rock and a hard place type situation, right? That he had no choice in that matter, right? But here in this case, in Pakunara's case, it's alluding to the fact that she is going to have to make a choice, and it's not going to be an easy one, because again, it is one that is meant to be between pride and betrayal. And also, the last bit, let's not forget that, apparently the Deathbringer is meant to be hovering close by, right? Or nearby. So, of course, initial reaction to that, initial interpretation of that is Kurapika in this case, right? In relation to the Phantom Troupe. So yeah, now that they are staying, there's a really good chance that this is going to play out, right? And, from the sounds of it, this could be something really quite interesting, right? Really quite tense. So moving on to Sharlnark's fortune, don't make any phone calls. Now, of course, that one is pretty clear cut, right? Because a phone, his remote control, or it doubles as a remote control. It's essentially a phone, right? At the base of it. So I suppose you can just assume it's talking about his remote control device, right? So the first line is essentially telling him to not use it, right? But the second one is really quite interesting. And it states, when it matters most, you will be unable to reach anyone. So, there's two possibilities here, right? Is it literally just, alluding to him using his device as an actual phone to get in contact with a fellow member of the troupe? Or is it saying that his device is just not going to function as he thinks it might? And of course, his phone-like device is a remote control, right? It's kind of the key feature as far as his manipulation ability goes. But the last bit of his fortune is a little bit cryptic, isn't it? It would be unwise to answer the phone, for the Deathbringer will come one time in 3, right? So again, kind of alluding to Kurapika, possibly. But also, that being said, Kurapika is not the only one that is after the Phantom Troupe, right? And I don't mean in the sense that, okay, he's got, people like Gon, Killua, and Leorio on his side as well. I'm not really counting them. I count that whole group as Kurapika, right? The other one is, of course, Hisoka, right? That's been really clear cut that he's targeting the Phantom Troupe. They made that really clear in Heaven's Arena. So, I mean, his main target is Chrollo, right? The main task at hand is to fight Chrollo. But, the rest are still on the chopping block as far as Hisoka is concerned, right? Now, the thing is, they kind of broke up in groups because, of course, it's the best bet at this point to make sure that no one is by themselves, especially people like Shizuku, who's given a really specific fortune in that regard, right? In terms of being isolated. Do not find yourself isolated, rather. Something along those lines, right? Now, is there a possibility that Hisoka might, he might try to pull something off there, right? Him, Franklin, and the bandaged up guy are meant to be staying at HQ, right? Because of course it has to incorporate Hisoka's fortune, right? That he has to stay here. Do not leave your temporary shelter. So is there a possibility that Hisoka might actually make a move against the other two, right? I mean, I don't know if that's a good move. 2-on-1 is certainly better than, him against the entire Phantom Troupe, right? If they all jumped him at that point. But still, it's these are Phantom Troupe members. 2 against 1 is still, it's still quite the task. So I don't know. Is Hisoka just going to stay put as all of this is playing out? That's the main question here. And also, surely Crollo picked those two. He handpicked those two for a reason, right? Franklin and the bandaged up guy. Maybe a part of him is thinking that, okay, there's always a possibility that Hisoka could have something up his sleeve. He could be planning something, right? Maybe I'll leave these two specifically here. Maybe between the two, there's a solid counter against Hisoka or his abilities. But yeah, terms like Deathbringer can certainly apply to Hisoka as well, as far as, the Phantom Troupe's fortunes are concerned. But let's shift the focus now to the other party, right? You've got Gon, Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio. There's quite a bit going on there as well. But, that being said, a lot of it is actually a bit of a recap, isn't it? You get a breakdown of Kurapika's abilities from the man himself, right? And, a lot of it, or actually most of it, is stuff that us, the audience, knows. But the fact that they are kind of giving us, this reminder, to me, that's essentially a sign that, okay, here's a refresher because, these abilities are about to come into play once again really soon. But yeah, it turns out that indeed Killua does not want to pursue this anymore because, it just doesn't make sense for them anymore. And indeed, the bounty money was, one of the main reasons for Killua kind of pushing ahead in the last episode, right? To really go after the Phantom Troupe, because clearly he hasn't forgotten about Greed Island, their priority. So yeah, he was pushing for that in the last episode for this reason. But now that the bounty's gone, he doesn't want any part of this anymore, right? He thinks it's just not worth it at all as a whole. Right, so you see that protective side of Killua at play once again. I mean, he tries his best to keep him out of this. He hopes for the best as well. It actually made for a lot of funny moments, right? Killua's internal monologue, be it him hoping that, Kurapika turns him down, turns down his offer. So in this specific case, Killua was unsuccessful in keeping Gon away from unnecessary risk. And it's just really nice to see, isn't it? To Killua care this much about Gon, right? It's not something new. They've established that, Killua does care about Gon in that capacity, that he wants him to be safe, right? He wants him to be around, right? This is his friend. This is his best friend, his only friend, right? Again, there's even that possibility of a soulmate. They do have that type of connection. So he's always thinking about keeping Gon out of unnecessary danger or risk. And, even as, he kind of accepted, okay, this is happening, the idea of Gon being a decoy, immediately Killua steps in. He's like, whoa, that's a bit of a risky role to play here for Gon, isn't it? Puts him on the front lines, puts him immediately up against, or it exposes him to the members of the Phantom Troupe once again, right? Even for a split second, that's quite a bit, right? To be exposed to the members of the troupe. So I love to see it. I just love this side of Killua, right? It's been great to see the development over the span of the series so far. And of course, the main target, and the only target actually at this point, is Pakunora, right? He tells him to just ignore everyone else, and this is because of her really specific ability. So if you take that information and you take the information from Pakunora's fortune, there could be a coming together, and it could make for a tense scene. They might, a few of them might find themselves in that place that the fortune is describing, right? And at that moment, Pakunora is meant to be faced with a tricky situation, a tricky choice, right? So let's see. Now, as far as Kurapika breaking down all of his abilities for Gon, now I believe the only new bits of information here are related to the judgment chain, right? First of all, he can only use it anytime he has the scarlet eyes, anytime he's in that state. But then, of course, immediately he follows up by saying he's kind of mastered being in that state, right? He can call it in on demand, essentially, right? He can tap into that on demand. So this idea of it being this kind of OP ability, it kind of became even more OP, didn't it? Yes, there's restrictions. Of course, there's restrictions, but I think it's okay to call it a bit OP. I think it's safe to call it a bit OP. And of course, that means he can become a specialist on demand and that he can use a judgment chain on demand. And again, the main component of that is that he can use it on anyone. It doesn't have to be a troop member. Now, even though that bit of information is presented as something new, right? This revelation, it's not really truly new information. They've shown us Kurapika using most of his chains against everyone else already, and they've already shown us that he did have that blade pointed at his heart. This happened a long time ago, right? It was the car, right? This is after he grabs Uvogin for the first time and they're getting out of there. And I remember Melody just freaking out and telling him to, look at the road ahead. At that point, he specifies that he has a blade pointed at his heart. And then, of course, a few episodes later, as the fight is playing out and he does bring out the judgment chain, then I kind of put it together. Oh, okay. So this is the same thing he pointed at himself. At least that's my understanding of it at this point. But of course, there's this really incredible moment, right? This collective resolve that Kurapika gets to see, right? And truly get to see the types of friends that he does have. All three of them are still open to the idea of the judgment chain, the blade pointed at the hearts, because that's how strongly they believe in this, right? That's how strong their resolve is, that they rather die than give up Kurapika's secrets. And of course, as expected, he had no intentions of putting blades inside of, Gon, and then of course, Killua or Leorio either, right? It's just not something I could picture him doing at all. But he's still quite touched by the collective resolve, and that's enough for him. He straight up just told him, if my secrets get out, so be it. I accept it. And at this point, I'll have no regrets. It really is quite a beautiful moment. It's a touching moment that Kurapika gets to experience this, right? He truly needed this after, these past few episodes. And again, a few episodes ago, he was really down and out, right? He's had some rough times. He's had some rough days. And it's just simply wonderful to see him with his friends in this capacity. And at this point, he most definitely understands that he's lucky and blessed to have friends like them. And I think that should do it for this one, folks. Actually, Machi brings up Gon and Killua to Chrollo, right? And that gets Nobunaga really quite excited. And then, of course, they fill Chrollo in on that whole situation. But the main point that comes out of this is, him asking Machi, right? Why the concern? Because he knows she has sharp instincts. So, he had to explore that as well. And, ultimately, he decides, okay, there could be a connection. And I think it's actually a great little scene because, it kind of reiterates just how much of an understanding Chrollo has for each one of these members. He understands all of them, right? The things they excel at, the things that make them tick. Now, honestly speaking, I don't know if I had an issue, but, the notion of just her having a hunch, I was kind of hoping for maybe some kind of reasoning behind it, the reason she's able to have such sharp instincts. But it sounds like it's just how it is, right? She just happens to have sharp instincts, right? And she can have these god tier hunches on things. But yeah, that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or full opacity, or timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 56. Until then, take it easy.